Howdy Moz fans, my name is Phil Nottingham and welcome to another edition of Whiteboard Friday. Today we're going to talk about how to come up with a great idea for your video series or podcast. I think a lot of businesses out there understand that there's just this great opportunity now to do a longer form series, a show in podcast or video form, but really struggle with that moment of finding what kind of idea could take them to the next level and help them stand out. And I think the most common error that businesses make is to start with the worst idea in the world, which is interviewing our customers about how they use our product. And I'm sure many of you have accidentally fallen down this trap where you've thought, maybe that will be a good idea. But the thing is, even if you're Ferrari or Christian Louboutin or the most desirable product in the world, it's never going to be interesting for someone to sit there and just listen to your customers talking about your product. And the problem is that your customers are not a unique group of people aside from the fact that they use your product. Usually there isn't anything else that brings them together. And for this kind of content, for video series and podcasts to really stand out and to grow in terms of their audience, we need to harness word of mouth. And word of mouth doesn't grow through the way we often think about audience growth in marketing. Many of us, particularly in the performance marketing space, are used to thinking about funnels, right? So we get more and more traffic into the funnel, get more people in there, and ultimately some of them convert. But the way word of mouth works is that a small group of people start communicating to another group of people, who start communicating to another group of people, and you have these ever-expanding circles of communication that ultimately allow you to grow your audience. But that means you need to start with a group of people who are talking to one another. And invariably, your customers are not talking to each other as a kind of rule of thumb. So what you need to do is find a group of people, an audience who are talking to each other. And that really means a subculture, a community, or maybe an interest group. So find your group of customers and work out what is a subset of customers, what kind of community, wider culture are they part of, a group of people who you could actually speak to. And the way you might find this is using things like Reddit. If there's a subculture, there's going to be a subreddit. A tool like SparkToro will allow you to discover other topics that your customer base might be interested in. Slack communities can be a great source of this. Blogs, there's often any sort of topic or niche audience have a blog. Hashtags as well on social media, and perhaps meetup groups as well. So spend some time finding who this audience is for your show, a real group of people who are communicating with one another and who ultimately are someone who you could speak to in a meaningful way. Once you've got your audience, you then need to think about the insight. And what the insight is this gap between desire and outcome. So what you normally find is that when you're speaking to groups of people, they will have something they want to achieve, but there is a barrier in the way of them doing it. And this might be something to do with tools or hardware, software. It could be just to do with professional experience. It could be to do with emotional problems. It could be anything really. So you need to kind of discover what that might be. And the essential way to do that is just through good old-fashioned talking to people. Focus groups, surveys, social media interactions, conversations, even data that you have from search, like using Google Search Console, internal site search, search volume, that kind of thing, might tell you exactly what sort of topics, what problems people are having that they really try to solve in this interest group. So what we need to do is find this particular little nugget of wisdom, this gold that's going to give us the insight that allows us to come up with a really good idea to try and solve this barrier, whatever that might be, that makes a difference between desire and outcome for this audience. Once we've got that, you might see a show idea starting to emerge. So let's take a couple of examples. Let's assume that we are working for like a DIY supplies company. Maybe we're doing, just sort of piping. We will discover that a subset of our customers are plumbers, and there's a community there of plumbing professionals. Now, what might we find about plumbers? Well, maybe it's true that all plumbers are kind of really into cars, and one of the challenges they have is making sure that their car is up to the job, or their van is up to the job for their work. Okay, so we now have an interesting insight there, that there's something to do with improving cars that we could pick for plumbers. Or let's say we are doing a furniture company and we're creating furniture for people. We might discover that a subset of our audience are actually amateur carpenters who really love wooden furniture. And their desire is to become professional, but maybe the barrier is they don't have the skills or the experience or the belief that they could actually do that with their lives and their career. So we see these sort of very personal problems that we can start to emerge an idea for a show that we might have. So once we've got that, we can then take inspiration from existing TV and media. And I think the mistake that a lot of us make is thinking about the format that we might be doing with a show in a very broad sense. So like we're doing an interview show, we're doing a talk show, we're doing a documentary, we're doing a talent show, whatever it might be. But actually, if we think about the great history of TV and radio over the last 100 years or so, all these really smart formats have emerged. So within talk show, there's Inside the Actors Studio, a very sort of serious, long, in-depth interview with one person about their practice. There's The Tonight Show starring Jimmy Fallon, which has got lots of kind of set pieces and sketches and things that intermingle with the interview. Or there's Ellen, where multiple people are interviewed in one show. If we think about documentaries, there's like fly on the wall stuff, just run and gun with a camera, like Diners, Drive-Ins and Dives. Carrying on the food theme, there's Chef's Table, where it's very planned and meticulously shot and is an expose of one particular chef. Or something like Ugly Delicious, which is a bit more like a kind of exploratory piece of documentary where there's kind of one protagonist going around the world and they piece it together at the end. So you can think about all these different formats and try to find an idea that maybe has been done before in TV in some format and find your way through that. So let's think about a plumber example. Plumbers who love cars. Well, we could do Pimp My Ride for tradesmen. That's an interesting idea for a talk. Or we could, let's say we're going after like amateur carpenters who would love to be professional. We could easily do American Idol for lumberjacks or carpenters. So we can start to see this idea emerge. Or let's take a kind of B2B example. Maybe we are a marketing agency, as I'm sure many of you are. If you're a marketing agency, maybe you know that some of your customers are in startups, and there's this startup community. And one of the real problems that startups have is getting their product ready for market. So you could kind of think, well, the barrier is getting the product ready for market. We could then do Queer Eye for product teams in startups, and we'll bring in 5 specialists in different areas to kind of get their product ready and sort of iron out the details and make sure they're ready to go to market and support the marketing. So you can start to see, by having a clear niche audience and an insight into the problems that they're having, then pulling together a whole list of different show ideas, how you can bring together an idea for a potential interesting TV show or video series or podcast that could really make your business stand out. But remember that great ideas are kind of 10 a penny, and the really hard thing is finding the right one and making sure that it works for you. So spend a lot of time coming up with lots and lots of different executions, trying them out, doing kind of little pilots before you work out and commit to the idea that works for you. The most important thing is to keep going, keep trying and teasing out those ideas rather than just settling on the first thing that comes to mind, because usually it's not going to be the right answer. So I hope that was very useful, and we will see you again on another episode of Whiteboard Friday. Take care.